It's the question everyone asks is like, well, like if I don't have a mask, do I have to just like put my mouth on the other person's mouth? And always be like, well, I can't tell you you have
It's the
to, but like
difference
if the
between
person's
life
gonna
and
die
death.
if
Get
you
over
don't,
it.
that's
Yeah.
on
Oh
you.
my
Worry about the
God.
germs versus a person dying. Like maybe reconsider your career.
I feel like that should be like a question on the lifeguard certification thing. Like, are you prepared to put your mouth on
Yeah.
somebody if they're going to die? And if you say no, you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't get a certification.
I mean, even
Just
I
saying.
would do that.
Oh, that's sweet. It's really sweet. Oh my
All right. Well, this
God.
has
All
devolved
right.
into chaos. So we'll let you go now.
On this episode of the Grey's Anatomy recap podcast.
Oh my God.
Fun.
Welcome to the Valley Girls, the weekly podcast where we explore everything there is to see, do, try, eat, and experience in New York's Hudson Valley by talking to the makers, the doers, the growers, the creators, and all the unique voices of the Hudson Valley. We're telling the Hudson Valley's story one episode at a time. I'm Jenny Leifer, a lifelong Hudson Valley resident. When I'm not co-hosting Valley Girls, you'll find me talking all about health and wellness, finding the best gluten-free eats in the Hudson Valley, and giving back to the community through volunteerism and service.
And I'm Jennifer Santiago, a Hudson Valley native who has spent the past 20 years living in Texas. I'm currently splitting my time between Texas and the Hudson Valley as I'm in the process of moving back, and I'm so excited to explore and rediscover everything I love about the region, including hiking, history, and the local arts scene.
Today, we are talking to a guest who almost needs no introduction because we have mentioned him so many times on the podcast already. Jordan Koshai is the founder of Connect HV, and we've talked about him in the episode with Danielle Centafonte Davidson from the River Towns. We talked about him when we interviewed Matt Zucker from City It. He has his whole own episode of the City It podcast, which is episode 94. Jordan has great suggestions on our blog from our gluten-free episode that we did with Lindsay Mangieri. So I feel like Jordan is a longtime friend of the show, but we will still go ahead and let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about Connect HV. Thank you for being here, Jordan.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, my name is Jordan. I am a lifelong Hudson Valley resident. I grew up in Ulster County in the town of Wallkill, or I should say the hamlet of Wallkill. There is a separate town of Wallkill. And then I've lived in New Paltz, in Beacon, and now I live in Poughkeepsie with my wife and kids. I am, by day, a product designer and software engineer for a company in San Francisco that I work remotely for. My real passion is connecting people in the Hudson Valley. I just think there is so much interesting stuff going on here. There's so much creative energy in all different fields. There's music here, there's art here, there is film here, there's just a huge culinary scene here. And it seems like a shame that a lot of these people don't know each other. There's a scene in Beacon, and there's a scene in Rhinebeck, and a scene in Kingston, and they don't necessarily meet with each other that frequently. So I've been plagued by this thought that someone needs to build a network of networks. And for years, I was waiting for someone to do it. And then eventually I thought, you know what? If this is the thing that keeps bothering me specifically, maybe I am the person to try taking a run at this idea. And so that brings me to where I am now, which is running Connect HV as a side project when I'm not being a dad or working my day job.
That's awesome.
That's really great. So you and Matt Zucker actually had an excellent interview on the City It episode that Jen mentioned. So we don't want to rehash all of that. We'd love people to go listen to that conversation. Thank you for that incredible scoop on Connect HV and what sparked the creation of it. Who is it specifically for? Anybody in the Hudson Valley? Any specific niche in the Hudson Valley? And how is it going so far?
It is for anyone in the Hudson Valley. I started off by saying it's for creatives in the Hudson Valley, but what I quickly realized is that my definition of creative is so much broader than I think some other people's. I think most people, everyone agrees an artist is creative, a musician is creative, a filmmaker is creative. But to me, if you're doing any sort of generative value creating work, that counts as creative. If you are an employee of a school district and you're just making things a little bit better for the students there, that sounds like creative work to me. If you are in local government and you're working on helping small businesses get grants, that's definitely creative work. In fact, I am hard pressed to think of a profession that's not creative in some way. And so I say it's for the creative scene in the Hudson Valley, but really, I think it's just for anyone who cares about the Hudson Valley and the people who live here. So far, it's going well. I've got three facets to this project. The first one is the web platform that I was building, basically a directory where if you want people to be able to find you, you can say, hey, I'm in Hudson, New York. I'm a composer. And if anyone is looking for composers in the Hudson Valley, your name will pop up. That's got several hundred users. A couple of months ago, I started a Slack channel because people kept asking me, is there going to be a Slack team? Is there going to be a conversation platform for people to just hang out and chat? And then almost immediately, that got about 350 people within maybe a week and a half. And now we're creeping up on 500. And it's thrilling to see how much connection is happening. I'm a little bit allergic to the term networking because it always makes me think of like LinkedIn in real life. It's networking sounds to me, I know this is ironic because I kind of run a pseudo networking organization. Networking to me sounds like you're meeting people to get something from them versus meeting people because people are intrinsically amazing.
You want to pitch them. You're going to play nice until you can get your pitch in there.
Exactly. And that
that is very much not what the Slack channel has been at all. I feel like people are just exchanging ideas and people are saying, hey, I just hired my first employee. Does anybody have a good recommendation for a payroll software? And I haven't seen anybody really, yes, people are sharing their work and everyone's curious about what everyone else is doing, but it hasn't felt anything like that kind of ickiness, like I'm just here to get a gig. People really are looking to connect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's blowing my mind because I'll get DMs occasionally from people, and this is the most validating thing in the world. I've heard from people who have hired people that they met via the Slack. I've heard from people who've gotten gigs through the Slack. And I've heard of people who they had coffee with like a venture capitalist or a startup founder that they connected to via the Slack because they didn't know that this scene was here, and they're meeting the people that they really like wanted to be meeting this way. And that to me is thrilling because I think that we have so much here in the Hudson Valley. And if we can just surface that a little bit more effectively, I think it's just better for everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that if we just keep pushing on that.
I mentioned Danielle, who we had on an episode. I found her through your Slack channel, and she's the president of the Rivertowns Chamber of Commerce. And she also has a business in Sleepy Hollow called Main Street Business Strategies. And so Jenny's in Hurley. I am from Poughkeepsie, so we do a fairly good job of understanding everything there is in Dutchess and Ulster County, but we don't spend a lot of time getting to Westchester. And Danielle is just a fountain of knowledge about everything that's going on in that area. And we liked her so much when she came on that we're talking to her actually later this week about coming back for season 2 to do like a Westchester minute on every episode. So, we're covering more of the Hudson Valley and people who are like, that's cool that all that stuff is happening in Kingston and Woodstock and Saugerties, but, I'm in Terrytown and I'm not going to drive up to Ulster County all the time. So that was an invaluable connection already right there from your Slack channel.
There's another one.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love your really broad definition of creativity because I've always said I admire creative people and wish that I were creative, but I don't feel particularly creative. But the way you define creativity, I am creative. And so I like that.
You are 100% creative.
So a lot of people like me who don't consider themselves creative, because I can't draw a stick figure that you would recognize as a person. So that's why I think, I'm not creative, because I don't have specific types of artistic talent. But also, I think people think of creativity as something that really happens in isolation, especially things like writing. But we recently interviewed Sari Botten, who's an awesome author who lives in Kingston. And for a long time, she ran a Kingston Writers Workshop and she worked on the TMI project. And so she talks a lot about the importance of community for writers, which is somewhat counterintuitive because you think you're just writing on your computer. So what do you think is the benefit of this kind of community and connection for people who are in creative fields and might otherwise be kind of in their own silos?
I think that any person's output creatively is the sum total of their previous experiences and all of the other inputs that they're getting. So I think you limit yourself if you're doing everything totally solo. If I'm just left to my own devices and I'm doing just what Jordan thinks is cool, I'm going to have a really hollow, shallow vision of the world because it's going to be how I already see things, as opposed to if I have all these ideas bouncing around my head from people that I've met at meetups or seen talking in Slack, or ideas that maybe I hadn't considered before because it was just I was talking to someone who has a different background than me or different experience than me. I think that at the end of the day, humans are social creatures, and we need the interplay with other humans and other humans' ideas, just for the sake of being a complete person, but also for the sake of our creative life. It'll eventually just, I think, wither if we're left to our own devices all the time.
Yeah. When we talked to Matt Zucker from City It on our podcast, and we also talked to him on his podcast, which was super cool. But we talked about how he reached out to us. He had just hit his 100th episode, and we were, I think, on 9. And he said, "Hey, do you want to do a crossover episode?" And we're like, "Us? With you? Like, you're so out of our league. We thought we'd contact you a couple of years from now, and we were, could play on your playing field." But we talked to him about how he just has this really generous spirit. There's no kind of feeling of, well, I have a Hudson Valley podcast, so you guys need to sit down. He just was like, what are you doing? What platforms are you using? What guests are you using? Oh, do you know anybody who does this? Oh, I should introduce you to this person who does this. And I see that spirit in the Connect HV Slack community as well. Everyone's just really generous and eager to share resources in a collaborative way. And there doesn't feel like there's any sense of, it's a pie and more for me means less for you. So I love that a lot. And I think that's a very unique Hudson Valley thing. I think because it all kind of has a small town feel. And so people feel like we're all neighbors. And so we're all going to work together. And I appreciate that a lot.
I agree with that. I think the Hudson Valley default is to think of things in terms of the pie can be grown versus the pie is a limited size and everyone is just like scrabbling over their piece of it.
Yep.
And I think that's incredibly healthy.
So people seem to have really seized upon this opportunity to connect with each other in this way and become part of this community. And it seems like that has led to an appetite for your live in-person events. So that's something new that you're doing. You've done one so far and you have another one scheduled. Tell us a little bit about your live events.
So we did one at the very beginning of May, and we actually had the second one. At the time of this recording, it was last night. So
Okay.
I'm still riding the high of our second live event. And it started when Freddie, who's the owner of Barn Fox, the co-working space in Poughkeepsie and Kingston and Hudson, he reached out and he just offered free space. He said, if you want, we could just pick an evening and see if anyone wants to come. And I figured we'd probably get a few dozen people. We had at the first one, I think just shy of 100, and at the one last night, I think just over 100. Impressively to me, it was actually a very different crowd at each of them. One in Poughkeepsie, one in Kingston, so kind of drawing from different parts of the Hudson Valley. And it was just a really interesting dynamic group of people. There were chefs there. There were a lot of film and TV people, a lot of software engineers and designers. There were some people there who were just curious about the scene. I met a couple of people there who had moved to the Hudson Valley on Thursday and came on the following Wednesday. They drove from Beacon to Kingston to be at this event because they wanted to meet people.
Wow.
And that to me says that this is working. People just really want to, especially in a post-COVID world where everyone's been kind of in their own little like headphone Zoom bubble for a while.
Yeah.
People just want to meet their neighbors.
That's so fun. So the idea of it was, I know networking is a cringe word for you, but so it's just a networking event. People are just chit chatting and meeting each other.
Yeah, no real agenda. It's just an opportunity. I'm of the belief that creative serendipity is a big concept. The idea that if you live in a place that's very populated, like a place like Manhattan or San Francisco, you're in and out of coffee shops, you're on the streets hearing snippets of conversations. And if you have an idea for something and maybe you need a co-founder, maybe there's something outside your skill set, you can like walk into a coffee shop and throw a rock and hit someone who might be your co-founder. It's a little harder in the Hudson Valley, but I think we still need the opportunity for just ideas to bounce off of each other, for people to be in a physical space with other people that are both like them, but not like them, just different humans. And apparently, just based on the number of people who have expressed interest in this, apparently people agree, and there's an appetite for just meeting new people and coming without any expectation that you're going to get something out of it or that you're going to sell someone on your business or your idea, just meeting interesting people that you haven't met before.
I think that is a really big thing. And people always ask, what do you think is the most important aspect of this? Or what's the meaning of it all? Connection for me is always my answer. And so I love this idea, and I love the way you've expanded it beyond just connecting for quote unquote creatives to connecting with other people. And that idea of creative serendipity is when you're in the right place at the right time, things can happen. But if you're isolated and you're not connecting with other people, it's very hard for that to happen. It's near impossible for that to happen. So I love that concept. And I was signed up for the Barn Fox event yesterday. Unfortunately, I was under the weather and I couldn't make it. But I'm very sorry to have missed it. But I do want to check out Barn Fox, and I'm sorry to have missed seeing you in person yesterday. But I'm really glad to hear that it was such a great event and such a great, so many people showed up. It seems like, I mean, I know your background is as a designer and a software engineer, and your side hustle is creating these online resources, but we really know you as a connector of people and the host of these networking opportunities. Do you feel like you're exercising some new muscles with this Connect HV venture?
Yes and no. Yes, in that I would describe myself as an introvert. I am not naturally a person who seeks out just like constantly being with other people. I think I'm someone who, like, my restorative rest time happens alone. But at the same time, even in my life as a designer and engineer, most of what I'm doing is connecting disparate ideas in interesting ways.
Mm.
And so I think it's not a huge leap to jump from doing that in the abstract with code and pixels to doing that in like a more concrete way with people. And so in that way, it's not a huge stretch, but at the same time, like, I've never done event management before or anything along those lines. Community management is new to me. Having an Instagram account with more than like 200 people on it is very new to me.
That
Yeah,
sounds a little bit like creative serendipity right there.
it
And
does.
I fell in love with creative serendipity when you said that. I wrote it down in quotation
Yeah.
marks. So I'm already seeing a spin-off podcast, Valley Girls and Connect HV, like a short one, Side Hustle School podcast. It's like 6 or 7 minutes every week. We could do a creative serendipity where we collect the stories of the people who have connected through Connect HV and come up with these, another cringe word, but synergistic opportunities because of meeting through the community. Those would be really good stories to tell.
That is such a good idea. I love that.
Yeah, it's so true. I absolutely love that idea. And I think I've always thought of that concept, but never had the right words to explain
Yeah.
it. But it's beautiful. So, okay, shifting gears a little bit. I've talked a lot on the podcast about having celiac and being gluten-free. And when we were working on our gluten-free Hudson Valley episode with Lindsay Mangieri, we put out a call for listeners to tell us some of the gluten-free places they love. And you tagged your wife, who had lots of great ideas. We love to ask everyone who comes on the show for their Hudson Valley greatest hits. I know you and Matt Zucker talked about your love of Minnewaska and Rough Draft, which we share. So tell us specifically your happy places to eat. What's your special occasion restaurant with your wife? Where do you go if you want dinner with a view? What's your favorite pizza place up here?
Oh, great question. So my wife has a pretty serious gluten sensitivity. It's celiac adjacent. We're actually not sure if it's strict celiac or not. We just know that if she has something that was even cross-contaminated with gluten, she'll be out of commission for a week. So I am very up on all of the gluten-free, friendly, and understanding restaurants in the Hudson Valley. My all-time favorite restaurant is Brasserie 292 in the city of Poughkeepsie. It is just an exceptionally well done, thoughtful French restaurant. It's modeled after Balthazar in New York City, and they have done exceptionally well mimicking the decor, mimicking the food. I think their food is better personally.
Ooh.
I'm a little biased, but
a bold statement.
Yeah, their steak. I don't know what they're doing to their steaks, but I want to learn that skill. That's my all-time favorite restaurant, not only in the Hudson Valley but anywhere. I like Blue Point in Newburgh for a view. Excellent seafood, excellent turf as well, non-seafood. And it's right on the Hudson. You get a great view of Beacon down to Bannerman's Castle, and you can kind of just see Cold Spring through the water gap. And it's on a nice day where it's sunny but not too sunny, and you sit in there. It's an indoor-outdoor seating area where like the walls just completely open up, but you're still shaded. It's perfect.
That's great. Oh, I got to check. I love hearing new places. A lot of us, even though the Hudson Valley is such a large area, so many of us have like this similar or same, those are two. I know of them. I've heard of them, but I have never been there. So I'm excited. I have
Yeah.
to get to those
Please
places.
try them and let me know what you think.
I definitely will. I definitely will. And knowing that they're safe for your wife, and
Yeah.
I know they're good for gluten-free. So that's really exciting.
So
Yeah.
Love that.
just a couple of thoughts that I'm having while we're talking, because I also like to connect people with each other. So I mentioned actually on the episode of City It, when we were talking about you with Matt and about live events, and he mentioned the Barn Fox events that were starting to happen. And I said, we have to introduce you to our new friend, DJ Jimmy, who is in Poughkeepsie, who was on our Pride episode. So he runs Out Loud Hudson Valley, which is an event business,
Yeah.
and he's also a DJ. And so that would be a great collaboration right there, because at some point, your events, which are already creeping up over 100 people, if you're going to do them monthly or even quarterly, that's going to be a job unto itself. So, hooking up with somebody who has all the event skills cred would be a great idea. And we love Jimmy. So, he's another
great.
one of our friends who's never getting away from us now that he's been on the podcast.
Right.
And then also you were talking about wanting to create like the network of networks, which is, I think, John Burton. We talked to John Burton recently. He has a podcast called Home From Here in the Rhinebeck area. And I think he just joined the Slack channel after we talked to him about it and I gave him the link, but he's talking about something similar, creating, kind of the podcast network of the Hudson Valley. So people like us and like Matt from City It and like Brett Berry from Catscast, those of us who are doing the regional podcasts, maybe we all find some kind of connection there where, especially once maybe we start getting advertising dollars, which we would love, by the way, because we're not making money yet. Maybe he has a way of centralizing that. So I know a lot of times advertisers don't want to go look at the demographics for 4 or 5 different regional podcasts. But so if there's a way to aggregate that and just kind of make the Hudson Valley, I know you've talked about making it a tech hub in the Hudson Valley. And so he's looking at kind of creating that podcast hub in the area.
Yeah. And one thing that I thought of this earlier when you were talking about, as opposed to being competitors, it's really more of a supportive area. Everybody really helps each other out and connects in a way that is very mutually supportive. And that was one thing that I love when we were talking to John. We're actually recording with him next week. We're going to be on his show, very exciting, and him on ours. And one thing that he said in terms of making, creating this sense of a podcast hub in the Hudson Valley is, you don't think of musicians being competitors, right? Like, you have a music genre and you have all of these, let's say, rockers or whatever, right? You have all these people who are in the same genre. You never think of them being competitors. A lot of them are buddies, they're friends, or they've been in bands together. So why does it have to be that all of these other fields are you immediately jump to that they must be competing with each other? Why can't we just be in that same sense of collaborative, supportive, instead of
right?
competitors?
I would never say like I have to
that.
choose between Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. I can love them both.
Right.
And
exactly.
I do love them both.
Exactly. So right. So it's the same thing. And he even made a point, especially specifically about podcasting, because he said somebody who's going to listen to your podcast, well, they're already somebody who listens to podcasts. So of course, why wouldn't they listen to another podcast, right? So it doesn't have to be a competitive thing. And I loved the way that he thought about that and expressed that. So just that same concept of collaboration. And I don't know if I can't say that's unique to the Hudson Valley, but I will say that, maybe a little biased, but I think people in the Hudson Valley are uniquely collaborative and kind and look out for each other. And, maybe it's the New Yorker thing, I don't know, but I do love that about this area as well.
I think we all love the idea of having access to world-class resources that we don't have to go to the city for. Not that we don't love to occasionally go to the city, but, Jordan saying, this restaurant in Poughkeepsie is not just my favorite in the Hudson Valley, it's my favorite, period. And I think it's better than the one they were emulating in the city. I think we all want to create that where we live. And I think that contributes to that spirit of, let's all make each other great.
Yeah. I hear people
Absolutely.
talk sometimes about this was a thing for a while about 10 years ago. The state was pouring resources into building this out as a tech hub. A lot of companies were thinking, like, should the Hudson Valley be? The phrase I kept hearing was, is it the next Silicon Valley? And that always rubbed me the wrong way
Mm-hmm.
because why be the next Silicon Valley? We're already the first Hudson Valley. We have the
Yes.
things that are unique about us are always going to be unique about us. And you can never be you're never going to be a better Silicon Valley than Silicon Valley or a better Hollywood than Hollywood, but you can be the best Hudson Valley. We already are. And we already have a lot of the
Yes.
good things of those other areas. So we should just lean into the fact that we are a world class Hudson Valley, not a second tier something else.
Yes.
Boom. I
Preach.
love that. Mm-hmm.
So now that everybody who's listening is all excited about the opportunities that you're creating and the collaborative spirit, and I know we're making it sound very kumbaya, but there's been no group hugging so far that I'm aware of. So you can do as much or as little, I feel like, with the community as you want to do. So how do people find you? How can they join? Are there any particular types of creatives or skill sets or backgrounds that you feel like you're really looking to connect with more of? Just where are we going next with this?
ConnectHV.com is the jumping off point to everything else. It'll link you to the Slack. It'll show you the live events. And it's its own directory. You can create a profile and show your work. And if you're looking for someone to join you on a project or to collaborate with or just talk to, that is the place to do it. I am very excited to say we have venues lined up for monthly events between now and October. We're going to be in Poughkeepsie again in July, back at the Poughkeepsie Barn Fox. And then on August 7th at the Senate Garage in Kingston, we're going to be doing our big kind of kickoff events. That's our first very large venue. And so I think we're going to do like an end of the summer, beginning of fall. I'm not really sure what it looks like yet, but it's going to be bigger than the ones that we've done so far. And if you are a food or drink sponsor, if you are a restaurant in the Kingston area, or if you happen to be from Keegan Hales and you're listening to this, we should talk because I definitely want this to be kind of a party for everyone who is enthusiastic about the Hudson Valley.
Jenny, don't you know
That's
everybody
fantastic.
at Keegan Hales?
I know some people. We can talk.
Yeah.
I know
I'm
some
talking
people.
to the right
We can
people.
talk. You are talking to the right people. I also just totally taking a step back, just thinking about, I have family members, I won't name them by name, who are introverts. And I'm just thinking, hearing you talking about like the party aspect of this. And I feel like you're also exploring the side that like you are an introvert, right? But here, Jen's usually the one who goes all psych nerd on us, but I'm going to go a little psych nerd right now. It's like, you're an introvert, and yet there still is this part of you that still wants to connect with people, even though you're introverted. And this is sort of like an outlet for that in a way. So I think it's incredible everything you're doing.
To
but
be a little psych nerdy, introverts don't not like people or not want to connect with
Right.
people. It's just that drains their energy. So introversion and
Right.
extroversion is more about how you recharge your battery. Some people feel very recharged by spending time with people, being in crowds, having a little bit of chaos. And then other people are like, I need to be in my bed with my cat, reading a book. That's me. So I actually consider myself an ambivert. I am very extroverted until I'm not. Like my social battery will
Same.
go from like 98 to 0 in a minute flat, and then I'm like, I'm done. And I'm famous for ghosting large gatherings. I will just, when I'm done, I'm done.
I can attest to that. I've been at many places with Jen.
It sounds relatable. Maybe that's what I am. Maybe I'm an ambivert.
Yeah.
Ambivert. And for those that don't know, Jen and I met in SUNY Albany, University at Albany, because we were in the same dorm and both psych majors. So there you go. There's
Awesome.
the background there.
I got a direct message on Instagram this morning. Someone had posted on their story that they had been at the event last night, and it was someone that I hadn't met before. And so I messaged them and said, hey, like, I hope to meet you at the next one. Thanks for coming. And she responded almost immediately and said, I debated if I should go because I'm an introvert and this is just not my scene. And I'm so glad I went because everyone was so kind and so friendly. And that, out of everything at the event and everything I've heard from, that to me is like the best. That's exactly what I want. I want this to be a comfortable space for just whoever, whether you like people or don't like crowds or think it's your scene or don't think it's your scene. Just, I want everyone to be welcome there.
Well, and a lot of people don't know how to jump in and make the first contact. Like, I'm new here. people are standing around talking in little, small groups. Not that anyone's putting out a vibe of exclusion, but it takes a certain skill set to just jump into that. So I'm not about to tell you how to run your events, but I do work on events in my professional real life. It would be great to do something like a speed dating type of thing. So a lot of people like an unstructured social event. You grab a drink, you chit chat, you hear somebody on the other end of the thing talking about something, and you're like, oh, hey, and not to interrupt, but I'm into that too. But a lot of people need a more structured setting. And so maybe for the people like that guest who are like, I know this is probably good for me to go, but it gives me the ick to get started with this. Just having that, optional, even if it's just 15 minutes speed dating round, maybe a little set of questions. I've done bingo cards at networking events too, like find somebody who lives in Sullivan County, find somebody who graduated from a SUNY school, whatever. So it gives you a reason to go up to somebody and say, oh, I still need the SUNY square on my bingo card. Where did you go to school? Just some people need that little icebreaker kind of handed to them. And then once they get warmed up, then they're in it.
That's a great idea. I love that.
You can steal it.
You don't even have to give her credit. It's fine. Well, Jordan, thank you so much. We will put all the links in the show notes and of course on our website, valleygirlspodcast.com. We will make sure to get connecthv.com as well in all of the notes. We just really appreciate you being here and talking with us. Thank you also for the service you're doing because it's much needed in this area.
It's my pleasure.
It's just great to have you.
Thank you. It's been just lovely talking to you. And I always find that my ideas feel clearer after having a conversation like this. So thank you for just chatting about all this.
Thanks for doing what you're doing and introducing us to awesome people. And I look forward to what the future holds for Connect HV.
Thanks so much.
Thank you to all our listeners. We hope you enjoyed listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the Valley Girls, please follow our podcast from our show page on whichever platform you listen from. Leave a rating and review and share our podcast with others. We appreciate it so much. To stay up to date with the Valley Girls and for more content, you can find us at valleygirlspodcast.com and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Links to all our social media accounts are in the show notes. We just really appreciate all of this. And also, you can connect to all of our social media through our homepage at valleygirlspodcast.com. So thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. Goodbye.
The music for this episode is by Robert Burke Warren, entitled Painting a Vast Blue Sky, and can be found on his album Redheaded Friend, available on iTunes and Spotify, and at the link in the show notes.